Hello, everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, Updates on IATF 16949, IA 9100, ISO 13485, and ISO 23485. Your presenters today are Chad Keimel, Bill Kovacic, and Frankie Breedlove. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, I kindly ask that you type them in the chat box and we will address as many as we can at the end of the webinar. We also kindly ask all participants to complete the survey afterward. Your feedback is greatly appreciated. If you would like a PDF copy of the presentation or the webinar recording, please contact us at webinars@omnex.com. Your first presenter is Chad Keimel, CTO and founder of Omnex Inc. It's a global authority in quality management systems and enterprise software. A former GM and KPMG professional, he founded Omnex to advance digital quality through innovations like the EWQIMS suite, which was the first FMEA software, and also to today's AI and machine learning enabled platforms. His expertise spans ISO and automotive standards, functional safety, ASPICE, cybersecurity, and integrated quality, environmental, health and safety, and IT systems. Chad has served on the Malcolm Baldrige Board of Examiners, received ASQ's Automotive Quality Professional of the Year Award, and continues to lead strategies for EV/AV systems and global supply chain resilience. I will let Chad introduce our other presenters today. So without further ado, please welcome Chad.
Hey, Andrew. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. So this is our third update of standards. And the very first one, we did it on ISO 9001, 14001, 45001, and actually something called ISO 19011. For those of you know it's about, auditing and how audits are done, all of which have changed, okay? The second one that we did was on ISO 26262, functional safety, ISO 21434, product cybersecurity, and we did it on ASPICE. And this is the third one that we're doing on sector standards. And thank you all for joining. I just want you to know each of these are its own 1-hour presentation, which we will do later this year as these standards further emerge. So today, take a look at what are some of the key changes that are happening and what are the dates you need to keep aware of in terms of how things are happening. So with that said, let's go right in. And we'll start because some of you may not know who we are. In fact, many of you do, but we always attract about 20-30% of new attendees. So we are a global organization with a headquarters in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Some of our larger offices are in Europe, in Chennai, India, and Shanghai. But we're in many different locations. We actually say 16 offices worldwide, but we have professionals all over the world. So we have 700 professionals in about 30 different countries. And what we take great pride on is we represent you in all these international forums. In fact, I am calling you today from Prague, in Czech, as a part of I'm on the writing committee for functional safety, ISO 26262. And Bill Kovacic was, in Peru last week. He led the US delegation there for TC 176, ISO 9001. He'll be one of your speakers today. And so that's what we do, and that's what we do for our customers. All right. Very global organization. We became the way we are, supporting Ford Motor Company in the emerging market strategy and the semiconductor industry when they wanted to support their assembly suppliers in Southeast Asia. All right, so this is what we're planned to do today. It's the updates on IATF, IA 9100. That itself is a story I'll be sharing with you on what's going on there. medical devices that Frankie Breedlove was going to talk to you about, and ISO 23485. And you may not have heard of that, but we'll tell you more. Let's skip that. So here's Bill. He is spent 38 years with Caterpillar. Very happy to have him. He is, can see here, he won an ISO Excellence Award in 2021, US Tag Award for Distinction 2023, and very active. He's a representative to TC 176, TC 207, and Bill, I cannot recall what is the technical committee for 45001. We thought the same person should be in all three of those committees so that they can bring it back. We can, add it, the source of truth to our training so that, and then of course, our software and the work we do in consulting. And here's Frankie, very accomplished. Customers love her. She is a expert in medical devices, and she's representing us in Technical Committee 207. And I have been part of all these different committees, but of course, as we join and be a part of many of these new ones, I have recently sort of focused much more, as you might know, on something called ASPICE, which is software, and also 26262. And I'm focusing on the software side of things. So Frankie will take my place and Mr. Dan Reed's place and share with you and lead our medical devices work. All right. So this is the plan for this next hour. We'll start with the background because none of these other standards will make as much sense unless you know all of them are driven by ISO 9001's changes. And Bill will share that with you. And Bill, let me ask you a question before you start. Do you have more information today, or do you think they would get more information if they went to the last webinar?
We have a little bit more information today because in the last webinar we were still in committee draft mode. Now we're in draft international standard. So it's although it's not fully baked yet, we're very, very close to what the standard will look like when it's released.
Okay, so here you are, folks. Let's find out more. Now, Bill is not getting as much time as he should, so he will. We will do one other one when it comes out in FDIS, probably April of next year. Go ahead, Bill.
Okay, thank you. I will go ahead.
Bill, are you going to show your slides?
Yes, I will go ahead and get into presentation mode.
Yeah.
Okay, can I just get a visual check? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so get right into it. So, as Chad already mentioned, the basis for many of these sector-specific standards is ISO 9001. That is undergoing a revision at the moment, as you probably know. So, whatever comes out of ISO 9001 will likely impact these sector-specific standards. And I'm going to briefly go through what a lot of those changes are. To give you a timeline, we are currently at DIS. The balloting and commenting for the DIS phase will close next month. Those comments will then be dispositioned and we'll go to a final DIS. That will be next spring/summer. And we expect ISO 9001 2026 to be released by September, and with the sector-specific standards coming out within a few months after that. Now, although there are several areas of the standard where the text has been rearranged to align with the new harmonized structure, a lot of what you're going to see in the look and feel of the standard is just that, is rearrangement of text. There are a few new requirements, but not very many. Certainly not like what we had when we transitioned from 2008 to 2015. Okay, some changes you will see throughout the new standard when it's released. The most ubiquitous one is what we've done with documents and records from 2008. If you recall, when we went to 2015, that phrasing changed to documented information to be maintained for documents or retained for records. That's changing again because not all languages into which ISO 9001 is translated had different words for maintain and retain. So when the standard comes out, what we would used to refer to as documents, is going to use the phrase be available as documented information. And for what we would refer to as records, documented information to be available as evidence of, in order to prove that what was planned was done. So the key word there is as evidence of. So that's changing. Also, international standard is being replaced with the word document. Risk-based thinking and opportunity-based thinking are being split apart. In the current standard, we talked about risk as being either positive or negative. The connotation, though, is risk is usually conceived as being negative. So there's an overemphasis on avoiding risk and not enough emphasis on exploiting opportunities. So they're going to split those apart in order to make that more balanced. As I mentioned, the text you'll see has been reordered many times to align with the harmonized structure, which is being used by all management system standards. A lot of other changes you will see will be additional or revised notes for clarification. And really, that is the driving emphasis for this version of the standard, is further clarification. We have 15 pages of annexes that will describe or clarify more what is meant in the requirements. So that is the overriding theme in this update. The one change you will see mentioned in several different sections of the standard is the addition of quality culture and ethical behavior. That appears in the leadership clause, the environment clause, and awareness clause of the standard.
Hey,
So,
Bill, let
yes.
me just interject. The kinds of things, let's say when you separate out risk-based thinking and opportunity-based thinking, and you could say there's no changes, but suddenly now you and the auditors will want to see opportunity-based thinking also. And you may have only focused on risk, and suddenly it becomes clear to everyone, hey, you got to have some opportunities in there, and they might ask you, where are your opportunities also? Okay. For example, when you see this, go ahead, Bill.
Correct. And we'll get to that when we get to that particular clause in the updates. But thank you, Chad.
Great, great. Thank you.
Okay, so one of the more voluminous changes you'll see is in clause 3, which is definitions. In the current standard, all it does is reference ISO 9000. Now, because of the changes to the harmonized structure, there are 23 definitions taken from ISO 9000 and put into clause 3 of 9001. These 23 definitions will appear in all management system standards as part of the harmonized structure. Of those 23, only one had a slight change, and it is for process. We've now added the words or transforms inputs to deliver a result. This is the only change. Otherwise, the other 22 definitions remain the same from the current ISO 9000. Clause 6, as we mentioned earlier, we're splitting apart risk and opportunities, and therefore we now have a couple of extra clauses here. If you look deeper into clause 6, you'll see clause 6.1.1 is about determining risks and opportunities, and then 6.1.2 are the actions to address risk, while 6.1.3 are the actions to address opportunities. And here's what that looks like here. I have a screenshot just of 6.1.2 talking about risks, but 6.1.3 is identical in its wording with two exceptions. We replace the word risks with opportunities, and we replace undesirable versus desirable. But as you can see, we're talking about addressing first risks in 612 and then opportunities in 613. The other change, and you'll see where we have changes in requirements, I have highlighted that in red for your notation. So we're also talking about determining, analyzing, and evaluating risks and opportunities for the organization. Currently, it says the organization shall plan actions to address them. Well, now we're talking about determining, analyzing, and evaluating those risks that have either an undesirable effect if it's risk or a desirable effect if it's an opportunity. Okay, and we also, as I mentioned before, we've added some notes here in order to further clarify what is meant. In 6.3, we have a few new requirements. We've added information to C, the availability of resources, and now information. We've also added 3 more requirements to the planning of changes. We need to plan how the effectiveness of those changes will be monitored and evaluated in order to understand if the change resulted in a net positive. We need to plan how we're going to communicate those changes and how we will review the results of those changes from the monitoring and measuring that we are doing about that change. So it makes a little more complete our planning of changes. 7.1.5.2 talks about calibration of monitoring and measuring resources. This is, we've added the words calibration or verification in order to clarify what was meant by determining the status of a particular instrument. So we're talking about determining the calibration and verification status. No real change in requirements, just clarification about what was meant by status. 7.1.6, we've replaced the phrase "and to achieve conformity of products and services" with "and to achieve the intended results of the quality management system." Okay. We've also replaced "and to be made available" with "applied and shared." So this is a little bit more active instead of passive. We don't want to just make knowledge available. We want to apply it and share it to the extent necessary. And again, we made some changes to the notes. By the way, I want to point out notes are not auditable elements within ISO 9001. They are purely for clarification. So notes are just basically editorial remarks to help explain what's going on in the preceding clause. In clause 8.1, we removed 2 items: determining the requirements for products and services. That is now covered in clause 8.2. We've also removed the output of this planning shall be suitable for the organization's operations. So that is no longer part of clause 8.1. Clause 8.2.4, we're talking about changes to requirements of products and services. And we changed it from "relevant persons are made aware of the change requirements" to "communicated to the relevant interested parties." Again, making it more active as opposed to passive, and also to basically keep scope creep from coming in to where we are not responsible that people outside of our organization really are understand the changes, although that is the intent. We're not being held to that. It is our responsibility to communicate those changes to the relevant interested parties. And then what they do with that information from then on is their business. 8.4.3 adds "and where applicable, its customers and other relevant interested parties." You can see that down here below in D. What we're talking about here is, particularly, is if you have suppliers that ship directly to your customer. It does not go through you as the organization, it goes directly from supplier to customer. What we're talking about is that these external providers or your suppliers are aware of the interactions with these customers or of other relevant interested parties. Okay, so it is incumbent upon you as the organization to make information available to your external providers what the uh, interactions are with these other relevant interested parties and your customers. Clause 9.1.1b, where we're talking about monitoring, measuring, analysis, and evaluation, just adds the phrase as applicable in order to give a little bit more freedom in that respect. 9.1.2 changes, it makes it a little more simpler and elegant to say monitoring customer satisfaction as opposed to perceptions of the degree to which needs and expectations have been fulfilled. Okay, so we're basically talking about monitor customer satisfaction. And you'll also notice that in the note we added social media, and you'll see that in a couple other notes that are not screenshotted here, where we're talking more about electronic communications, whether it be social media, websites, or things like that, in order to keep the standard more updated and relevant to today's environment. 9.2.2, internal audits. We've added a requirement that we now also need to define the audit's objectives along with the criteria and scope. And we've also tightened this up to say that results are reported to relevant managers instead of management. 9.3.2 is management review inputs. In the current version of the standard, we say that management shall take into consideration these topics. Now we are saying they shall include them. So you can almost read this as an agenda for a management review meeting. It is not required that you cover them in any certain order, but these topics shall be included in management reviews. And there is an additional one, changes in needs and expectations of interested parties that are relevant to the quality management system. So if you have changes in needs and expectations of, let's say, your customers or other relevant interested parties, that now also needs to be discussed in your management review. Okay, here we've had just a simple word change, went from outputs to results. That is to be consistent with some of the definitions. And curiously, we no longer say results of management review shall include actions and decisions or actions resulting from decisions. It now just includes decisions. Okay. I do know that there have been comments submitted from US tag members about this. So we'll see if this changes when it comes to FDIS. Okay, clause 10. We're combining clause 10.1 and 10.3 into just one continual improvement clause, and you see that here. So you'll notice there is no 10.3 in the new standard anymore. And we also talk about monitoring and measuring, not just analyzing and evaluating the data related to continual improvement. And here's what 10.1 looks like. We also did one other thing, and that's split apart, is addressing future needs and expectation into its own line item. You'll see here that both of those, improving products and services to meet requirements and addressing future needs and expectation, are both included in A. Now they have been split apart into A and B in the proposed standard. Okay, so where should you go for more guidance on any of these? Well, first of all, Annex A of the new standard, as I mentioned before, is 15 pages of explanation and clarification on what the requirements are intended to drive with regard to behavior. So use that information. It's very well written, and it's clause by clause. So if you have a question about a particular clause, you can go directly to that point in the annex. So there's a great source of information that the editors of ISO 9001 put in there. Secondly, ISO 9002, guidelines for application of 9001. That is also undergoing a review. The DIS publication date is expected in February to April of next year, then leading to FDIS in October and publication in April. So it's running on a track about 6 to 7 months behind 9001 because 9002 needs to see what 9001 is going to look like before they do their work. But that will be out shortly after 9001. And then finally, there is another standard, ISO 9001 for small enterprises, what to do, and ISO 9001 SME Success Package. SME stands for Small and Medium Enterprises. They provide guides, even more guidance on how to develop and implement an effective quality management system within your organization. So these are just more sources of information you can use to help you either deploy a quality management system or update yours to the pending new standard. Okay. Are there any questions?
So, Bill, there's a question for you. A couple of questions. You can just take a look at it, technical questions. And folks, if there's anything else you want to add, please do add it in the Q&A. I can tell you right now, we are going to go probably 10, 15 minutes over, is what I'm guessing. So, Bill, one other thing, we could do a presentation, maybe even first quarter. If you guys think we should do a presentation first quarter on this, please, let us know. And just on ISO 9001 DIS, but please do add annex. The annex, when the Annex A is asking for something very specific that you think might be a delta to ISO 9001, those guidance, let us know, because as a third-party auditor, I do know the auditors will very much, rely on things like that. Okay, wrong, but they will. Hang on one second. Bill, go ahead and maybe, and I should have moved my slides, in which I did. Let me do that very quickly, because I'll do the next section, folks, which is on automotive. Okay, here we go. Thank you very much, Bill. All right. Here is what we anticipate with IATF 16949, anticipated changes. What do we know for sure? That it's going to have all the changes of ISO 9001 in it. Let me also just tell you, if you didn't know, I did the first worldwide witness audit when IATF 16949 was called QS 9000 back in 1995. And as you know, Mr. Dan Reed, who was the automotive task force lead from General Motors, also is with Omnex. So we have all this wealth of automotive knowledge, as you might expect from Omnex. And so what's happening is they are very much, the IAOB and the AIAG is in the planning stage, watching closely how the ISO 9001, to be released. Everybody is, including the IA 9100, which I'll talk to you about. There are some selected priority topics for review in developing the second edition. They really haven't started their meetings. They're going to be starting the meetings. Although these priority topics are not public, we can anticipate what might change by reviewing the sanction interpretations. Bill, I might need some of your help as we sift through these 26 SIs. So, here are some of the likely clauses that will be targeted based on the sanction interpretations. So this is what's going to happen. Sanction interpretations now will work its way into the standard itself. So you can see contingency plans will be updated, terms and definitions will be updated, supplier quality management system development will be updated, external labs, and management review inputs. So that list you saw from ISO 9001, we all know from IATF, it's much more, but it's going to be worked on. Okay. It's also likely that some of these themes, these are the themes you see in the sanction interpretation. Supplier relationships. There are 4 sanction interpretation. Cybersecurity. Now you will see a lot more about cybersecurity in IA 9100 and the IA 9115, which I'll talk to you about. And as you know, cybersecurity is already a topic of the automotive industry. What is the standard everybody's implementing? And Omnex is implementing a lot of TISAX, okay? And we recommend, we always have, 27001 plus TISAX. And the European OEMs all require TISAX. And then Stellantis also requires TISAX, so does PACCAR. So cybersecurity is definitely a topic. And we have number of webinars on TISAX and 27001. 3 topics on external labs, 3 on process controls and measures, 2 on competence, 2 on management review inputs. There are measures to prevent recurrence of nonconformities, of course, coming from corrective action, but you can also think of it as part of the 8D. And then, of course, execution of control plans. Let me just ask, Bill, do you want to add anything? Do you want to suggest something to this? Bill did the analysis on this for this webinar. Anything you want to add to this, what I mentioned?
No, Chad, I think that pretty well covers it. The reason we broke it down first by clause and then by theme is because a lot of the themes appear in different clauses throughout the standard. So where there may have only been one sanction interpretation once on a particular clause, that theme appeared multiple times, and so it's likely to be addressed throughout the standard in that sense.
Okay, great. So this also was something presented in the Quality Summit by the IAOB as their wish list. More prescriptive sub-tier supplier development requirements, making it, and the whole goal of IATF 16940 and always has been of overall improvement of the supply base. A big focus on sub-tier. Make provisions for highly automated manufacturing organization. 3rd, very correctly, strengthen software requirements. Folks, why do you think everybody's focusing so much on software? So am I, by the way. Because 40 to 50% of the warranty now is from software. And software is that animal we all in the quality profession need to pay more attention to. Another thing that's proliferating is the use of AI. And don't forget, there's an AI management system. Omnex teaches that. But AI is showing itself in many different places. You'll see it also in IATF 16949. Making provisions for small manufacturing, lower tier enterprises. Requirements related to program management, clarity on calibration requirements, and then of course take as every time things change, SIs, sanction interpretations, make it into the standard. Also, common CSRs are consolidated and brought in, so the number of customer specific requirements can be reduced. Of course, but they always grow. Okay, all right. So what are some other automotive projects? So we have the APQP and control plan. You know, they were released. New editions were released February 2024. Maybe okay, and are mandatory for GM and Stellantis as September 1. New editions will become mandatory for Ford December 30. Of course, folks, we do training for both of these editions. What else is coming? Here are some of the core tools that are coming. There's a SPC core tool that you can expect to see in 2026. And I don't believe it's going to come out this year. It's going to be slated for next year. Okay. And there's a MSA that's being planned also for next year. So some changes coming our way. So the core tools finally are going to get this update it's needed. Then we have the CQI 34. Of course, there's a CQI, I believe it's 36 on electric harness, which came in. But the CQI 34 is something, quite important. I wish, I'm sure several of you in the audience are, suppliers of embedded software. So all of you need to be thinking about the software PPAP process, which I'll just mention to you is a customer-specific requirement for General Motors. And all indications are Ford will also make it a CSR in its new revision. But before we go there, here is what's required for a supplier software PPAP. Okay. We have training for it. I'll get to that. And this is, as you know, NA Spice was held just 2 months ago, maybe September. It's not just a month ago in September. And Greg Alling from Dana, who's the team leader for the CQI, made a presentation. And from his presentation, here are the 4 changes they're working on for the next edition. Aligning the CQI 34 with other standards, enhancement of common submission, a warrant document, how to deal with off-the-shelf components, and then, of course, change management and updates. All right. This is our class. We will make it a 2-day class with an example of an actual software PPAP. Just give us some times for the industry to start making PPAPs. And if Nikhil is listening, Nikhil will have to work with Greg on doing something like this, something hands-on and practical, as we do for the automotive PPAP. The regular PPAP is important. Folks, you may or may not know, we're very active in the aerospace industry, working and having done many, many different implementations for very large organizations. And I was part of the AAQG in helping write AS9100, the 2016 version. And this time around, I had just started getting involved with the AS9150, 9115, 9115, the last time around. And this time around, that's the committee that I've been focusing on. All right. So if you didn't know, there's the AAQG, EAQG, and there is a Asian AAQG. I forget exactly what their acronym is. Every one of them published their own, and the letters changed. We call it AS9100. Europeans call it EN9100, and so on. So as an effort to harmonize and make sure there's a good worldwide awareness of this 9100 standard, it is now being called IA, International Aerospace 9100 standard. Unifying, always the regional standards were the same. They could be different, but they're the same. But now it will be the same. Where are we today? Well, everybody's waiting for ISO 9001 to be released. But I can tell you a little bit more in terms of timeline, having just returned from the Washington IAQG meeting, which was a few weeks ago. So what had happened in April 2024, ISO 9001 hit a snafu. So did the IA 9100, which was called for an independent review with feedback on what they should improve. So there's an incremental version coming out this year. Okay. And this incremental version is directly related to that independent review. And will be a big focus on sub-tier suppliers. And then, of course, you're going to have a second version that's coming out in next year. Actually, it'll come out in the beginning of 2027. All right. Let's say the ISO 9001 comes out. I think we usually hedge the bet and say April through June. If it comes out in April, IA 9100 is poised to take that, include it in to these balloted. So they're balloting these comments that they're going to include in the ISO 9001 draft. So here is a picture that comes from the IAQG presentations. So the bottom is the incremental version that's coming out in November 2025. Okay. And, it's going through a ballot. It'll have to get approved. And this one will get added into what's coming out of the Washington, D.C. output. I told you, I think I was there last week, 2 weeks ago. There's 190 comments that were dispositioned. So it will go into this. And I guess I didn't put the other timeline in where the ISO 9001 changes come in during April. It'll go through another ballot, and 2027, early 2027 is when the IA 9100 is planned to come out. All right, what are the anticipated changes? Because we saw the whole 9100 standard, when in 2024, we have a good idea what's coming out. Improved information security to protect against cyber threats, a stronger counterfeit parts, more APQP concepts, including measurement systems analysis, which is coming into the standard. Let's see how that, because it's been commented on and balloted. Greater emphasis on risk-based thinking with the QMS maturity assessments, clarifying statutory and regulatory requirements, taking precedence over customer requirements. Sub-tier suppliers are a big focus coming out of that independent review. So more rigorous oversight of tier 1 and tier 2 suppliers. They actually want to see, yes, if you're implementing IA 9100, are you seeing product quality go up? This is the biggest, what top management requires of all different standards is give us results. Going on, there's a section on product safety. Will be elevated and integrated more deeply into the QMS. It will emphasize robust procedures for identifying, mitigating hazards, and managing safety critical components. Why do you think product safety is such a big deal? Look what's happening out there. And without mentioning what's going on, you know what's going on. And also from 9001, emphasis will be brought on quality culture. So quality culture is coming in. Let me ask, I was a US expert on a standard for quality culture, ISO 0010. Bill, I was expecting ISO 9001 to have quality culture in it. Is that the case, or I thought I saw quality culture in there at one time, but maybe no, I didn't see that. But definitely ethical behavior. Would you like to comment on that? Is
Yeah.
quality culture in ISO 9001 right now?
Uh, Currently, I don't believe it is, but it is going to be introduced in the 2026 version in those three clauses, most prominently in leadership, promoting a quality culture and ethical.
Yes, that's there, Bill. Make sure we put a slide on that. It's in that leadership responsibilities, promoting quality culture or something like that is in there. And you may have shown it in, or we may have taken it out when we consolidated the slides. All right.
It is referenced in the presentation.
Oh, great. Thank you. So, emphasis on quality culture, ethical behavior, and environment. And Bill, make sure the ISO 10010 gets called out. Moving on, a greater focus on sustainability and environmental impacts. As you know, climate change is a topic in ISO 9001, and a greater definition on FOD, okay? Expanded to include both damage and debris. All right. So, IA 9100 will be released. I just said, I was thinking when I wrote this, I said it optimistically, because they have to run a ballot. They have to get all the changes. You know, if ISO 9001 is late, everything gets late. Okay. All right. There's a FDIS planned April through June. So they have to get that, add all their comments, go for a ballot, and then they have to do translations in different languages. Okay. Then, of course, you have 9110. You're familiar with that? It's the aviation maintenance. 9120, aviation, space, and defense. And 9115, which is deliverable software. By the way, there is 9115 deliverable software tied in with ISO 9001 and non-deliverable software 9125, which is not tied in with ISO 9001. So that will not change. It's a brand new standard introduced last year. With this, let me turn it over to Frankie, and Frankie will talk to you about ISO 13485 changes. Thank you, Frankie. Go ahead
You're welcome,
and
Chad. Yes, you're welcome. Okay, can everyone see my slides?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about 13485. Well, 13485 is not actually changing. The relevance and or the reliance of the standard is, as the U.S. market will be leveraging 13485 for the FDA clearance in U.S. market. So again, 13485 just went through a review and there were no changes. However, the FDA has incorporated by reference 13485 as part of the 21 CFR Code of Regulations Part 820. Beginning February 2nd of 2026, the new FDA QMSR, Quality Management System Regulation, will replace the Quality Systems Regulation that is currently in place. And those that are on the U.S. have product on the U.S. market will need to comply with the requirements of 1345 as prescribed within the Code of Federal Regulations.
So, Frankie, this is a big deal. We saw it coming for many years, and this is much awaited update to the federal requirements so that they are not counter to ISO 13485, don't you think?
Yes. Yeah, the reason the FDA actually decided to harmonize with ISO 1345 is so that because the market is converging. Internationally, the markets are converging, where different territories and regions are relying on the standards more so. As such, FDA followed suit and harmonized the Code of Federal Regulations with ISO 1345. And as I stated, some have already stated that you needed to have a 1345 compliance as part of market entry. Now the U.S. is one of those countries. Okay. Chad had mentioned about TS ISO 23485, which is a guidance doc. Now, ISO 13485 did not have a guidance doc. As part of the last review, there was a lot of churn and a lot of talk about, the standard needs a guidance doc no differently than any other standard. So they listened and they're coming out with TS ISO 23485, which will be the guidance doc for ISO 1345 2016 version. Now, Chad had mentioned earlier about 9001. Remember, 1345 will be very little impact from the 2026 version until they look to see what the changes are in the 2026 version, because ISO 1345 actually still follows the 8-clause guidance in 9001 2008 version, not the 2015 version. The medical device sector did not upgrade the ISO standard to follow the 10-clause version or 10-clause standard of ISO 9001 from 2015. Okay, right now the 235 guidance document is in draft. We just had a committee meeting in this month in October, and it's gone to the board for approval so that it can go out for commentary. So keep a lookout. If you get alerts or you're on the committee to review, or you're asked to review, by all means, that would be a good time to peek into the guidance document and provide feedback on anything you feel as though the committee needs to clarify and or add to the guidance doc. There is no anticipated release date because, as I said, it just was drafted. It's now in the process of being approved for publication to the for release to the public for public commentary. So regarding the harmonization of the Code of Federal Regulations 21 CFR 820, which is the now quality system regulation, 1345 is not changing, but the actual Code of Federal Regulations for the FDA, they've went from 46 sections to 6 sections. And this one of the sections, 4.2, which we'll talk about later, is the primary section for the new regulation, or I should say harmonized regulation, because it's not new. It's just harmonized with 1345. But some highlights is that they've changed QSR, Quality System Regulation, to Quality Management System Regulation. They've established additional requirements and provisions to clarify certain aspects of 1345 and to clarify where they veer away from the 1345 terms and definitions of certain things. They've also made conforming edits to Part 4, which is the regulation for combination devices. It didn't change the requirements of the combination device, but it defined it as it relates to this change. And lastly, introduced new definitions and also removed some definitions from both 820 and Part 4 and Part 820. So for the Part 4, as I said before, 4.2 is important because 4.2 is the clause that defines what a device is per the FDA, and also is the clause where they incorporate by reference ISO 1345 as part of the Code of Federal Regulations. Now for the combo products, section 4 of the part 4 is where they address the combination devices, and that for combination devices, just to break it down, if you have a combo device and it has a device constituent part, a device part and a drug part, if the drug manufacturing process meets CMGP, there's only certain requirements you have to do for the device to meet the requirements or to confirm that it has these parts in order for the combo device to be compliant to the FDA's harmonized regulation. So here's just a few differences in the breakdown. It shows the core framework has changed, as I mentioned. It's now incorporated by reference. UDI changed. There's some things specific to UDI that they're relying on compliance to 21 CFR 830. In this change, you'll find that while they removed 40 sections from the QMSR that used to be in a QSR, they're still relying on that information to be there, and then they're leveraging other sections to ensure that you comply fully for those that aren't aware of the requirements of the QSR already. So 830, 805, 820, 821 are other sections of the Code of Federal Regulations that are incorporated by reference within the new QMSR. So some of within the scope, there were some changes to what's considered to standard requirements for the manufacturer to comply. And when contractors, so when you outsource or contract certain things out, they're now required to comply as well. And these are some of the areas of that: sterilizations, specification development, and so on and so forth. So it extended a little bit beyond. And then it talks about foreign entities and the first initial distributor and their compliance. For a finished device, it provides additional definitions for a finished device as such. The definition that was in the original Code of Federal Regulations was updated to this so that the harmonization is a smooth transition from leveraging and or using 1345 to comply and what the FDA expects, which is not necessarily defined well in 1345. Okay. So here's some more of the definitions. These are just a few that are in the section 820.1, 820 of the Code of Federal Regulations as part of the changes. They've defined components or parts, blood and blood components, HTCPs, human cells, tissues, and cellular and tissue-based products. So get to know those definitions and make sure your organizations know the changes, because again, the definitions within 1345 for these terms are not the same as they are in the U.S. Federal Drug Administration's eyes. So you must know their definition and comply to that accordingly. Incorporate by reference. That's something else that I had mentioned. So outside of the 21 CFR regulations that they have incorporated by reference, there's also ISO 9000. As I said before, ISO 9001 didn't impact the ISO 1345. It does not have an impact on ISO 1345, 2015, or the upcoming 2026 version. However, ISO 9000 does, because the FDA has adopted the entire section, clause 3, terms and definition of 9000, and it's incorporated by reference. In essence, the definitions that are in ISO 9000 2015 are definitions that the FDA will use to interpret any terms within it, instead of the ones that they used to have in the Code of Federal Regulations, not including the ones that they just defined. And again, incorporated by reference is the standard itself, ISO 1345. Note, when these standards change, manufacturers and or organizations will be required to continue to follow the standard to this for this specific release. September 15, 2015 of 9,000 and the March 1st, 2016 of 1345 until the FDA puts out an amendment, because they have to have time to review and determine what the changes are in these standards before they state how they're going to respond and or update the Code of Federal Regulations as part of it. Okay. There's more terms and definitions added in section 820.3 regarding component. And then also they explain that federal, wherever you see Federal Food and Drug and Cosmetics, is the same as FD&C Act. Okay. And that's under 21 USC 321, which is a regulation. Other definitions is a finished device. In this, what they're saying is that if a device can be used, whether it's been, so once you finish building the device, before you've packaged it, labeled it, or sterilized it, if that device can be used as is before the latter three things happen, that is considered a finished device. So those products that are sitting on the shelf inside the manufacturing organizations that have been completed to the point where they can actually be used, even though they haven't been sterilized, even though they haven't been labeled, even though they haven't been packaged, are now classified as finished devices. It explains more about the human cell and reliance on 21 CFR 1271, and it talks about remanufactured. There's more information about remanufacturing and what they're classifying as remanufacturing. So, but the fact that any person who performs this, they have the ability to significantly change the device's performance, safety, and specification. So there's heavy reliance on their compliance as well. So those third-party repair facilities are required to comply. Okay. Other definitions in section section 820.3 is implantable devices. They define implantable devices based on 21 CFR 860.3. So the definition of an implantable device within 21 CFR 820 is the same as 21 CFR 860.3. So manufacturer and organization are synonymous within the new QMSR. And for the safety and performance section of the QMSR clause 0.1 of ISO 1345, where safety and performance is stated in the quality management system regulation, the FDA's regulation that will go live in February of 2026, it is the same as safety and effectiveness of ISO. (8) 2010 has some definitions and details for the requirements of the quality management system. Here they lay out specific definitions and align so that, for example, identification. For identification, the standard ISO 1345 is not as prescriptive, but the FDA is prescriptive, and they say manufacturers must document, and they reference or rely on 21 CFR 830. So manufacturers will need to understand and know the requirements of 21 CFR 820 to be compliant. Same as for traceability. They rely on 21 CFR 821, and manufacturers and organizations must understand and rely on that definition and ensure that they comply. Now, for reporting to regulatory authorities, those reports that are issued by the organizations, you now have to ensure that you're compliant to 21 CFR 803. So as I said, the harmonized version of the FDA with the 1345 standard relies a lot on other parts of the Code of Federal Regulations to comply. So for this, they define devices that support or sustain life and the need to make sure that those devices are traceable. The golden rule is that if it's in the body 30 days, actually that's implantable. So for devices that sustain life, they must comply to the traceability. So the UDI and the prescriptive methods within the 21 CFR requirements for traceability apply for devices that sustain life. For enforcement, 2810, they're relying on 21 CFR 501H of the FD&C Act, okay? So from that, with all of the changes that have occurred within, harmonization that has occurred, things to recommend for next steps for any organization and a manufacturer. Perform your gap analysis of the QSR to the from the QSR based on the QMS to the QMSR. In essence, take your current quality management system and compare it to the requirements of QMSR to make sure that if there are any gaps, that you fill those gaps. You train your personnel to understand the different terminology between ISO and the FDA regarding devices. Keep an eye out for 24385 because that will help you transition as well. I don't believe that it's going to come out in 2026, more like 2027, considering they're only in phase 30, which is the prior to 40 for the public commentary, and then it has to go through several other steps before it's released to the public for publication and usage. And again, the QMSR goes live February 2nd, 2026. So there's additional slides in a PDF on this and the details for all of the slides for 1345, FDA's harmonization with 1345. But I wanted to cover some notable changes within the industry itself. The EU is updating its regulation, changing and updating its regulation. And they have some dates in here for high-risk devices legacy, ensuring that your legacy devices comply. High risk is by December 31st of 2027, and medium to low risk is December 31st of 2028. They're also rolling out phase rollout of the EU EMD UTMED, the UTMED database for device information. Okay. FDA, there's a lot of churn around the industry regarding AI and machine learning. The FDA has some literature and information out there about increasing focus on the life cycles of AI and machine learning, along
Frankie,
with development. Yes.
I'll mention we have a really good cybersecurity course that
Yes.
satisfies. Have you taught that course?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So that's a really good course that we highly recommend. It's mandatory. You have to be following it. And all right, please go ahead. And let's wrap things up.
Yep, I'm almost done.
Yeah.
To piggyback off of what Chad said, AI in medical device is definitely, there's a lot of churn in the industry, as I was saying before. And yes, it is very important, especially for SIMDs and SAMDs, software in medical devices and software as a medical device. Okay, so make sure you keep abreast of that technology and its impact on the medical device sector. The EU Act, the EU is having some changes also with AI and multi-learning, and all of this is in the PDF. So, and then here's some additional resources. See, told you it was going to be done in a second.
Well, thank you, Frankie. We have a lot of questions. We already answered 19 of them.
Okay.
What we'll do is we'll take the rest here. We'll take another 10 minutes, folks, and try to answer it. Much I think many of you may have stayed for this question. What is the anticipated IATF 16949 update? So our educated timeline studying what's happening is somewhere between March and July of next year is where we see the IATF 16949 getting released. Next question. Um, how sector-specific requirement will be included? For example, textile and garments. Any one of us, Bill? I'm not that familiar with textile and garments, but if it's a standard that includes ISO 9001, it'll have to get all of 9001 in it, okay? But as some of you already know, ISO 13485 is a one standard, and Frankie, you can attest to it. It's stuck in 2015, if I'm not mistaken, right? They have not progressed past ISO 9001 2015. There's a question on the
2008. They
oh,
they
2008, not
updated.
2015.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. They didn't
Yep.
take the process
2008.
focus.
But
Yeah,
they did
2008.
incorporate some of the not the clause structure, but they did incorporate some of the aspects of it, such as what do you call it? Process approach.
They didn't take the process approach.
They
But
did.
you
They
know
took
what?
the process approach. They took some other elements of it, but they didn't incorporate fully into it. They still
Okay,
used it.
sequence and interaction, and maybe some of the verbiage didn't get in.
Yes.
So it's been a while since I dabbled back into 13485. But there's a question about this later about implementing an aerospace standard and a medical device standard. I think you can integrate the two. I don't think, you need to be worried not to integrate because they're from two different ISO versions. So let me
Yeah,
just
and we
sort
actually
of.
have a client that did that, Chad. We actually have a client that I worked with to integrate, their IS 1345 and their AS 94 9100D are under the same quality management system.
Good. So yeah, it'll work fine. And Salim, if I've answered your question also, if textile and garments will have to use enter it. And Bill, there's a question earlier. I don't think you can take 9001 and not adopt the clause structure. You have to use the exact clause numbers. It follows the Annex SL, and you have to use it. All right.
Yes, that's correct for management system standards. All
Yes.
the directives from ISO is that all MSSs need to follow the 10 clause structure.
I'm not, yeah, absolutely. Since a lot of standards are expected to change in next 2 years, should we, okay. Um, yeah, we will provide transition training, and we'll provide, maybe each of these will become a maybe 30 minutes or 1 hour webinar each next time we do this as these standards come out further. But folks, continue updating, continue training your folks. These standards are incremental. Do we know the changes to the SPC and MSA? And I'll just mention to you the changes to the SPC and MSA. They'll be published as what they call yellow jackets, and then we will share that with you. Okay. All right. So we do teach 27001. We've been doing that for I want to say for about 10 years now. We've been doing implementations and audits to 27001, but the number of implementations have just gone up tremendously for us when TISAX came in and TISAX became a requirement. All right, let's see here. What did I miss here? This is for you, Frankie. Will auditors for ISO 13485 be issuing non-compliances rather than non-conformances? Is there any guidance yet on that?
The ISO, so the FDA will still be auditing their own regulation. So ISO, your certification bodies will continue to issue as they have, and the FDA will continue to issue as they have. That does not change.
So if you have non-conformances, are they going to be conveyed to the FDA?
No, that is not the intent.
Okay, all right.
But
How can we?
however,
Yeah.
I will say this. With the new harmonization, the FDA does have visibility to management review and your audits. So they
Okay.
will, what they are saying is that although they're able to review that information, in the past they did not. They will be reviewing that information, but you can mark that information confidential so that they don't share it with the public. So it's up to the organization to ensure before they share that information with the FDA upon any audit that they mark it confidential, and the FDA will look at it and make a decision as to whether or not it should remain private or is public information under the Freedom of Information Act.
Thanks. Bill, this is a question for you. Is Bill still with us?
Yes.
Okay, Bill. I don't know what I did. Something funny in my. Okay, there you go. How do we get a copy of the ISO 9001:2026? I know the answer to it, but I'll let you maybe give us the official answer.
Well, if we're talking about the DIS or even the FDIS in 2025 or 2026, you can contact ASQ and they should be able to get you a copy. Of course, if we're talking about the international standard
Do you
when it's
think they can
released,
get a copy of the DIS?
I think DISs are made publicly available. You may have to buy them. I don't know if they're handed out
I've
freely, but
seen that happening in ISO. Definitely, maybe the FDIS. And by the folks, soon as the FDIS comes out, or right when that's timed, Omnex will be ready with our training also. We will do a transition training for auditors, and we'll do an understanding training for the implementers. Okay, all right. Um, it is based on 2008 and not 2015. Yep, you're right on that. But yeah, talk to us offline and we can tell you a little bit more on how to align that, okay? The IA 9100 and the medical ISO 13485. And I am not doing such a good job going in order here. Let me just open it up because it's jumping. Are there any specific software development requirements in 13485? Could I say that the SANMED and the requirements in FDA are not going to, the software requirements are not going to get rolled into 13485, or are they, Frankie? Do you know?
No, so still rely on IEC 62304 for software development.
Yeah. It's a pet class, including of mine, and folks, we actually know a lot more because we do so much work now in terms of software development implementations in a number of different sectors. So that's something we like to do. With the anticipated changes coming at IATF 16949 regarding supplier management, do you anticipate additional standards and requirements surrounding cybersecurity will be added for these suppliers? I am going to imagine, so already there is cybersecurity requirements, with TISAX coming in. Will there be any for the suppliers? I have not heard of that, Hunter. I have not heard about any supplier requirements for cybersecurity. I'll see if anybody else on my team has heard, but this is a IATF question, okay? This is March to July 2027 for the IATF 16949, okay? Because the ISO is coming out in the FDIS. The IS bill is being published almost the end of November or December of 2026, right? The ISO 9001.
they're targeting September of 2026.
Okay. So with that in mind, it'll probably be first quarter 2027 before the IATF comes out. So this is a big question, Florina, I'm getting from our European part of Omnex about the 19011. So we'll have to talk, we'll have to take this as a subject with Dan Reed, who represented us on 19011, about the using emerging technology in conducting audits. Are you hearing anything about that, Bill? The idea of using technology for conducting audits?
Not directly, no. I mean, there is talk about emerging technologies, but specifically in regards to AI, I don't think that's being addressed yet.
Yeah, I also heard about using a software tool for auditing, but I don't think those are way more generic type requirements in 19011. But let's remember to take that on as we do another set of these webinars next year. Folks, we will do that. We'll update everything we have and make it more relevant to how these standards are emerging. With that said, I want to thank our speakers today, Bill Kovacic, Frankie Breedlove, and thank you very much, folks. And thank you for all of you for attending. Thanks, everyone. Bye bye now.